conversion rate optimization, but there's got to be a process. So we've got to know a few things before we even get going. Who are our users? What do they want? What problems are they encountering at the moment? How do we fix those problems? And then did those fixes work? So we need to start by understanding who our customers are. And it used to be our customer in a fashion world might be a young single male professional, but that's not really it, is it? We all know that your customers take many forms. You've got the one who comes back to you all the time. We've got someone who is buying for their son or partner. You've got someone who might be completely new to the scene that you're trying to sell in, or someone who might not know your brand, but they know the market. And each one of these people is going to have different kind of needs from what your website does. So you need to kind of understand the demographic, the psychographic, and the behavioral of those customers in the B2C world. When you bring it over to the B2B world, you also need to understand the size of the business that you're selling into. And the size of the business, have they got 10 people, have they got 10,000 people? Because each one of these things will make a difference in how you kind of, your message and how you get that across to your customers. With the digital users, what problems are they suffering from? What are their motivations? Are they looking to go out and buy something straight away? What questions might they have? In a fashion world, you might think, are these going to fit me? What are the returns policy like? What's delivery like? How fast am I going to get it? The other motivations could be, I want to look really good. Actually, therefore, I want something that has been seen on television or been seen by someone who's kind of influential in the world. The state of mind, are they actually going out this weekend, therefore they need it right away? Or is this something that they're looking to do in the future? So when we talk about the cruises that we help P&O cruises sell, some of those are like 2-3 years in the future. So it's not all about getting the sale there and then, it's about understanding sort of the length of that purchase journey. And the touch points, it's not just going to be your website, it's going to be your contact center, it's going to be your social networks, it could be a physical store. So you can't think of a single user taking a single journey, because what they'll actually do is experience your brand in so many different touch points. So you need to be able to define your user needs and find what problems are getting in their way to really help them. Now, how do we start finding those problems? Well, we've sort of got the qualitative and the quantitative. So from the qualitative side, we talk to customers. We ask them kind of questions, surveys, opinions. From the quantitative data, we've got the numbers, the hard data, and the graphs. So starting with the user research, you can go straight into the sort of one-to-one moderated user research. And this could take a couple of forms. It could be, what we have here is, if I see that, this is actually the sort of the user and the moderator, and the people here are from the brand who are kind of watching them whilst the research session is going on, and they're slightly kind of sort of separate from it. Or it could be here where you're actually sort of effectively on top of the user whilst they're using the website. Before you kind of bring users in, you need to make sure that they're representative ones. Representative ones. So you need to make sure that you are, if you're looking to solve problems for those loyal customers, make sure you get a loyal customer in. If you're trying to reach a new market, try and recruit users that are representative to that market. When we start talking about how many do we need, you're kind of thinking anywhere in the sort of the 6 to 12 bit is sort of ideal. So if you had all the time in the world, you would, and all the money, you'd recruit as many people as you could, and you'd ask them all 100 questions, and you'd get so much data, but a lot of it would be repeated. So the good analogy with this is actually if you had a dark hotel room and you pick 6 people in it and there were holes in the floor, you shove 6 people in, you're going to fill quite a few holes. Then you shove another 6 people in on top of them, and they'll start to sort of, they'll walk over the filled holes, and you might fill a couple more. So Within sort of 6 to 12, we'll often find that you can fix a lot of the, or understand a lot of the problems that your representative users are having. You need to make sure that you're giving them a representative task. So rather than just saying, go and get a coat, go and buy a coat, you kind of need to help them understand what sort of, what will your customer actually be looking to do. So ask them to go and find a new pair of going out trousers. It's an important event. Get the correct size for yourself and a price range that you're happy to be comfortable with spending. Another way of looking at that would be, imagine you're going on holiday to a very cold place. It's got to match what you're already wearing, and it's not got to scale when you get to check out and see it cost £1,000. And then the important thing, you've got to shut up. It's very difficult, but you need to let the users do the talking. Because if you kind of start biasing them, it's not going to help you. So you need to make them feel at ease. You need to put them in a nice, tidy, comfortable room. And create a rapport with them, have a conversation with them before you start. And don't ask leading questions. So don't ask, did you like that jacket? Did you find this frustrating? What do you think about the blue jacket? It's got to be open questions and not questions that have a single yes or no answer. You've also got to practice your questions beforehand and get out your poker face, because if someone says, I really don't like this feature that you've just created and it's spent you 6 months to do, you've got to not show that. You've got to understand, you've got to take the opinions that they've had and try and understand why they might be having that opinion. This example was, someone was asking the Beatles, how has success changed your life? Yes. Like, that's not helpful. That's not the sort of conversation that you want to have with your customers. Survey-wise can be done a number of ways. So you can look at sort of the traditional ones that are Net Promoter Score and a System Usability Score. So you may well have heard of Net Promoter Score, and it does have its detractors, but it's a very kind of well-known sort of 0 to 10 scoring system of would you recommend our brand to your customers, where 1 to 6 they are seen as a detractor, 7 and 8 are passive, and 9 and 10 are promoters of your business. Over time, this can really help sort of track whether you're sort of doing things in the right way or the wrong way. The system usability score comes from a slightly more systems background, and I think it was 1986 that it was first thought of. And it's sort of 10 questions that you ask users, and it's on sort of a Likert scale of strongly disagree to strongly agree. There are 10 questions that you can take out which ones aren't relevant to you. And you can also change the language within them. There's one of the questions is, did you find this cumbersome to use? And we were actually running a session with a group of people, and one of the people had to put their hand up and say, I'm sorry, actually, I don't really understand what cumbersome means. And that was our fault. Like we sort of put a word in there that didn't just make it easy for the end user to really sort of give us the feedback we wanted, and we kind of made her feel a little bit silly. Other surveys that you can ask are sort of on-site surveys. So once someone has got to the checkout page and if they've exited, you can sort of run something like Hotjar that sort of recognizes when a user is scrolling off the tab that you're on, and that can trigger a survey saying, why were you thinking of leaving today? One of the most powerful questions that you can ask someone is someone who's actually bought something. If you ask them, what nearly stopped you buying today? Because it didn't stop them, but you can guarantee it would have stopped 10, 20, 30 people who didn't. So normally we'll see the answers to that will be price, delivery, something along those lines. But actually you can get a really good sense of what is just stopping people from going that last little step of the journey. You can also ask questions on product pages, asking, what more do you need to know about us to make a decision today? What did you come here to do today? You've got to be careful not to put these all over the site and annoy customers by showing these as soon as they land on the page, because that's not what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is get user feedback at the appropriate moment. Going on to the biometrics. So this is actually sort of a step above what a lot of businesses will be doing because it's more difficult, but it's so powerful. What we've seen so far is very much the conscious reporting of customers. So, do I remember what I saw? Did it make me smile? Did it make me act? But what users won't tell you is what is happening effectively below the iceberg. What is their face telling you? What is the conductivity of their skin? And we'll come on to this in a minute. Where are they actually looking rather than where the mouse is? So what we'll do here generally is, in this example, we were testing a mobile experience. So we have this camera based on the looking down on the mobile. We've got an eye tracker beneath it. We've got an EEG on their head, and all that connects to a computer where lots of magic happens. So the eye tracker is something that looks a little bit like this, and it sits just beneath the screen. Now, the accuracy of this is about a thumbnail. So it's not perfect, but actually it's pretty damn good. You can also do eye tracking through a pair of glasses. Now, these can be really helpful if you're looking for a real-world example. If you're sending someone around a supermarket and you're trying to see what brand of cereal they're looking at or how high up the shelves they're looking. Or if you're in a retail shop environment, actually, where are people looking when they first come in that front door? And if you're looking to do something like billboard advertising, put some glasses on people as they're driving past the billboards. See actually if users are interacting with it before you spend too much money on a huge campaign that actually you're not going to get eyeballs on. Eye tracking, when you actually start running it, it kind of looks a little bit like this, and there are good videos that show you actually what happens. And eyes generally dot around an awful lot. So you'll see lots of sort of form and mouse tracking things that say that people read in an F or an E shape. What we mostly see from eye tracking, though, is that users look everywhere. So it's such a key thing to try and pare down what your pages look like, because users are always looking for distraction. And anything that looks shiny and colorful, they're like, ooh, what's that over there? So in this example that we ran for ASOS, they've actually got a fairly good, clean product page here that had effectively three main areas where users were looking. We've got the main image here as number one, the thing that people most looked at. Then you've got sort of the secondary images here, and finally the product details around size and adding to cart. You probably can't see it, but we've kind of a couple of things here that are quite useful are TTFF, which is time to first fixation. So this helps you understand what people are looking at first on your landing pages. So in this example, the main image was 2.9 seconds, and then the secondary image was were followed at 7.3, and finally the add to cart stuff was at 9.2. But we run this for the rest of the page as well, and then you really start to see how important sort of the product or the design hierarchy of your page can be. Within there, you also see how many times users are revisiting parts of your product page, which when you start pulling out into graphs like this, which I appreciate may not be the clearest, but kind of what we see here in green, this is the amount of time that users are revisiting, and this is a product image. So as users are looking at the products, they keep on going back to the image. Do I still like it? Let's have another look. On the far right is the wish list. So users didn't really revisit it at all. And they're also, the blue one being the time to first fixation, it was the sort of the least important thing for them to look at first. Then what we also see is delivery, it took them a long time to see it first, but then actually they start revisiting it. Again, this shows that when you first land on a product page, you're not that worried by delivery. You want to see the image. But once you're happy that it's time to make the decision to purchase this, I'm now worried about delivery. And you can see that people start revisiting those elements. This was going to be a playable example of eye tracking versus mouse tracking. What we generally see are three different routes that you'll take. Some users won't move the mouse at all. And in those scenarios, eye tracking is great and mouse tracking doesn't work at all because all you see is this static page. Then you kind of get the users who will diligently follow every single word with their mouse, and actually they're really useful because you can see that a user is sort of diligently following the site like that. But what we generally see is a delay of, say, 1 to 3 seconds from the eye for the mouse to follow. Galvanic skin response sounds really terrifying, and it measures the sweat in your hands. But we're not talking like buckets of sweat. We're talking sort of micro changes in a user's state as to how they're feeling when they are looking at a page. So it's done with this sort of watch size piece of equipment here. It isn't natural. We appreciate that. But if you can kind of get someone to put it on as soon as they enter the testing room, and then you start, like we say, have that rapport with them. After 5 minutes or so, it doesn't even feel like it's on. So we do find that it isn't something that you're like, oh, it's not there. It's not like lifelike experience, therefore I don't believe it. What that pulls out are graphs such as this. Now, in this example, this was our MD playing a computer game. So you sort of see spikes and falls. In this example, he was playing like a shooting game, and at these points, he was killed. So you can see the reaction in his skin tone, in his skin response as he was playing the game, has these sort of real peaks and troughs. And so what we're looking to do in an e-commerce perspective is see what's triggering users to have those sort of experiences. With facial expression analysis, there's, I think, 33 elements on a human's face that we start checking. And this is two of the guys, Maggie and John from our office, being our helpful models. And they can, we can then track whether people are smiling, frowning, scowling, whatever it may be. It's a trained AI model from 7.5 million faces, so it's pretty good at seeing things such as like joy, or anger, or surprise. So not just the positives, but also the negatives. Fear isn't a very nice thing to have on a website, but there might be something within there that is making a customer fear sort of the experience that they're having. The EEG is a step above again, and we don't generally do many of these because it costs quite a lot more for these pieces of software and hardware, and also you kind of have to slightly scratch the user's scalp and put a bit of gel in it. So it's not the easiest sell to users, but depending on how much you're really trying to put into it, this can be really helpful then at pulling out kind of how someone is feeling engaged or bored or frustrated with your website, or the yellow one, excitement. So in this example, they were very excited when they sort of first visited the site, and then over time, you can see that sort of the excitement waned and the boredom kind of rose. So that can help you understand, is there a particular point of the journey that is really stopping people from enjoying the experience that they're having on our site? And we've got a very good example of that with this Waitrose case study. So we were doing this case study on mobile, and we had a lovely user experience up to this point. And then you click checkout, remember, on mobile, and that's what you see. And I haven't even scaled these down at all. That happened to me. It's a great mobile experience, and then it's utter trash. And what this then shows is that when we go back to the system usability score that we talked about earlier, Waitrose performed really poorly because we asked them afterwards, did you find it easy to use, and the other questions, and they were like, no, I didn't. It was horrible. But that's not what the emotion told us from the previous tests. That actually Waitrose had more positive time spent on their site than negative. So what happened? Because users are saying they don't like it, but their expression is telling us something different. And the reason for that is in this journey from sort of start at the top to finish at the bottom, they had such a poor experience at the end that it tainted the view of the good experience they had leading up to that point. So that kind of really shows in this example where they need to start looking at sort of improving their journey, because the negativity bias is the notion that something bad has happened to me towards the end of that journey, and that's going to have a greater effect on my state of mind than all the good stuff that's happened beforehand. There are so many sort of biases out there that I think are well worth looking into. There's an excellent book as well from a lady called Natalie Nahai called the Webs of Influence, and the psychology of users and the biases of what they're doing is so important, and something you can really take away and start trying to understand how you can use that in your brand. Be aware there are so many that one type of bias might sort of clash against another, but if you start sort of following a few of them, you'll see a real positive impact on your sort of terminology and what you're doing online. When we start talking about the quantitative analytics, I could probably do a whole talk on this on its own. I've been in sort of analytics for longer than I care to remember, and it is so important to dig into the detail within analytics. It's very nice to be able to go into a trading meeting on a Monday or a Tuesday and go, yep, our conversion rate last week was 3.1, and that's up 10% on last year. Aren't we doing brilliantly? But that is masking what is really happening beneath the surface. You need to kind of identify the kind of the core customer journeys through things such as this or the enhanced e-commerce, where you can really still drill down as to, in this example, this is the cart adding to checkout and then putting your address details, billing details, review, and purchase. Is there something in here that has changed significantly from last week or last year? Or, more likely, and so once you've sort of done that, you can start to prioritize, okay, we think we've got an issue here on the first stage of our checkout. Let's go looking at that piece. When we start looking at sort of graphs such as the previous, I then start pulling this out by so many different ways, because again, if we just said the conversion rate was 3%, that's masking the differences between mobile, desktop, and tablet. That's even masking the differences between an iPhone SE and an iPhone 10. They are completely different mobile experiences, but if we just say, oh yeah, iPhones are converting at 2%, that's completely missing the point. You need to understand what is happening on particular devices. I've now kind of got my own mini device lab at my with as many different old devices that I can find, just to see, is this experience still good on something that I may have a relatively modern phone, but if we're selling to a slightly older clientele, it's more likely that they haven't upgraded their phone in a couple of years, and they could still be on something a little bit older or smaller. Don't just think, oh, no one uses IE anymore. Well, I bet you a lot of customers do still use IE, especially if they're on a corporate machine at work at lunchtime. Don't just say, oh, our users don't use Macs. Like, you kind of got to really understand the size of the opportunity of where your customers are actually interacting with your brand. Within enhanced e-commerce in Google Analytics, you can really start to pull out the add to cart ratios for individual products. So you can then start comparing your shoes versus your jumpers. Is there something that is on one of those journeys that isn't converting well compared to the other one? if you're looking at a product list page. You can then also start to see what position within that product list page is getting the most click-throughs. So do we need to really we've got these sale items, we want to bring these up to the position 1, 2, and 3 because we know actually they get sort of 10% more visibility than everything else. Going slightly deeper, you can then, if you've got form fields on your site, you can track how long it takes people to click into a field, or how many times it might take them to change it. What we often see is autocorrect is on by default, and then you see a mobile user having to go back and change their name because their phone has autocorrected it, and it's so frustrating for users that if you can really start to see how many times users are revisiting fields within any forms on your website, you'll really improve the experience. And scroll depth can also help understand how far down a page people are really engaging with you. Do you need a super long homepage just because everyone in the business wants their piece of the homepage? Scroll tracking can really help you say, look, 90% of people don't get below the fold, therefore let's really just use that piece to really get our main message across. Session recording can feel slightly creepy at first. This is watching users' real sessions back. So it's all anonymized. You can't see any data from them. But it's so useful to be able to say, actually, we think there's a problem in our checkout because the conversion rate's really fallen on Chrome browsers. You can filter this to just go and look at Chrome browsers who reached the checkout but didn't reach order confirmation page. And you can then start seeing, did they have problems with a particular form field? You can get very overwhelmed with data if you've got 10, 20, 30,000 people visiting your site every day, month, or so. But if you filter it, like I just said, to a specific problem that you've identified, this can really help legitimize that there's something there that needs fixing. Mouse tracking, we sort of talked a little bit about the mouse versus eye tracking. The good thing about mouse tracking is it is sort of baked into these systems that do things such as session recording anyway. It can be where they've moved the mouse, and it can also be where they've clicked. The thing that I like to do is see if people are clicking where they shouldn't be. So if people are clicking, in this example, say like on the home page, they think that's supposed to link somewhere, but it doesn't. Therefore, should it? Yeah, it's trying to understand where the journeys they're actually taking, are they the journeys that you want them to take? You should always be tracking as many website errors as you can. Anytime anyone sees a 404 page, you should be tracking that as well, because all these little things they can all have a slightly negative effect on how a user is using your website and give them a bad experience of your brand. If you start tracking them, you can fix them, and it often has a much sort of bigger uplift than any sort of CRO can handle. If you can, you want to get an expert, and you'll often be too close to your own brand, to your own website. If you can have someone who's sort of slightly step removed, they'll have a more objective view on it. They need to understand about usability, information architecture, and conversion and user flows. So this expert audit is very much, it's going to that next level. It's taking it away from the user research and really giving it to someone who understands how a website should be built. From all the sort of the qualitative and the quantitative that we've talked up to now, we should now have an almighty list of problems. So where do we start? We need to kind of put this into some kind of prioritization list. If this was an example of a normal journey from homepage through to payment, and we've identified from analytics and from users that we've got a bit of a problem on the product, the cart, and the payment, that's really where we should be sending our focus. Yes, users also said they didn't quite understand the home page or the category page, But if the data isn't sort of backing up that user thing, let's come back to that. Let's focus on the bits where we've got the most data that tells us that we've got the most problems. So with the product, it might be some analytics. With the cart, we may have some analytics and some self-reported, and it was brought up in the UX audit. With the payment, actually, we've got all of those, plus we did the biometric testing that says there's a problem there. We've got the most data here in the payment section, so that's really where we probably should be looking. So now we know our problem areas, and we sort of want to know how should it look. Well, there's going to be best practice that you can always look at, but best practice doesn't necessarily mean it's the best, it just means it's the most common practice, so be a little bit careful. But Google did recently release a number of, I think they call them UX playbooks for a number of different genres, including kind of e-commerce and mobile, and I think there was an autos one. They're very useful to get a very good overview of what's out there. There's also websites. There's a really good one called goodui.org. It is a paid-for solution, but there is a little bit of free content there as well, and that can give you some really good insight into what your cart page should look like. Have a look at your competitors, but don't take it as read that they know what they're doing either. But it is useful to see the terminology that they're using and the journey that they're putting customers on. Is it significantly shorter or longer than yours? From all your feedback, there will be some user suggestions. Take it with a little bit of a pinch of salt. Don't, because they probably don't necessarily have the sort of the website and UX understanding, but it certainly can go into the mixer. And then from your internal business, no one really knows your business better than sort of those who work in it. Again, they're not necessarily going to know the ins and outs of the process that you've taken, but there can certainly be some good insights from bringing the business along for the ride, and it kind of helps with the buy-in as well. If you can start to run some lunchtime sort of demonstrations of what it is you're trying to do, you'll often find that people really buy into that because it's something tangible that they see. Like if they see something that they suggested on the website, they'll be like, great, yeah, I've helped that. So we like to put everything into a strategy map to then think. So it's always narrowing down. So we've narrowed down the focus area in this example to the cart checkout rate. So now we need to narrow down what we're going to do to help fix that, because it could be anything from simplifying the decision making to optimizing the funnel path, to removing steps, to personalization, to understanding seasonality. So you again need to narrow it down. And in this example, we're going to simplify the decision making and reduce the number of steps in the checkout to help improve what we're going to do. So we're going to address the questions and concerns that we've identified up front. So we're going to do that through messaging around website security. We're going to add some delivery information and some social proof with reviews or Trustpilot, so those types of things. They're really, really helpful, especially if you're trying to get to that persona that we talked about earlier, where someone doesn't necessarily know your brand, but they know what you sell. The trust that you can get from the review platforms can really help there. Skipping the upsells generally helps because it makes the journey shorter and easier. So let's kind of make that more prominent that someone can skip. And then let's also reduce the pressure of making a decision. If someone has a decision to make and they're not quite sure whether they should do it or not, the default is to not do it. So can we reduce the pressure of the decision by talking about free returns or payment methods such as Klarna, which is like a buy now, pay later type scenario. Lots of fashion houses are using that nowadays. So now we've got our problems, we're going to put them into a hypothesis. So this used to start out as, if I do this, this will happen. If I change something, then our cart conversion rate will increase. But that's not very good. That's not backed up by data. So it's better to say, if I increase the primary call to action contrast, then we expect to make more money because it's easier to distinguish. And even that's not perfect because we haven't got the data in there. If we can say our current cart conversion rate is 3%, research has shown that it is because customers can't actually quite see where they should be clicking to continue. We think that changing the primary call to action, the contrast, will make it easier to distinguish, and we will increase our cart conversion rate by X%. So it's much longer, but you're backing your hypothesis up by data, which is really where you can start to make sure that when you come up with these tests that they're going to win. You want to use the metric that is closest to what it is you're testing. And what I mean by that is if you're testing the home page, don't make the primary KPI add to cart button clicks, because the two things are fairly unrelated. If you're changing the checkout, then you want the primary KPI to be in the checkout. You want it to be transactions or stage progression. And also make sure that your metrics are tied to business goals. It might be great that we've got more people looking at this page or that page or doing something. But actually, if that's not helping the business make more money, then you should be spending your time somewhere else. If we were going to go back to our example here where we've got this, we're trying to address the questions and concerns, we think that by adding information about the security of the transaction, we expect users to complete the transaction because they'll feel safer purchasing with us. It's a very solid hypothesis. It's backed up from data. It's backed up from experience. And it's sort of ready to then go into some kind of design. With the example of reducing the pressure, we think that by making buy now, pay later more prominent, users will feel happier to complete the transaction because there's less pressure. And for the upsells, we think by removing the upsells stage, more users will progress and convert because there's less friction. So these are sort of three specific hypotheses that we can that we've taken from the data, and we can now push on to running a CRO program. And you might think, yes, brilliant, right, we're up and running, we've got solid data, solid hypothesis, we are going. And then, unfortunately, you get a Hippo, which is the highest paid person's opinion. And this could be manager, it could be CEO, it could be the CEO's wife's friend, who says, I was using your website the other day, and I couldn't use it because it didn't do something. And it's like, oh dear, right, so now we've got to kind of throw away all that kind of good insight and data that we've got because this hippo's come in. And they're not always cute, cuddly hippos. They could be growling hippos, like we said, like a CEO. What you have to do here is, like we said earlier, if you can bring the business along for the ride, if you can explain to them the process that you're going through, you can start to negate sort of someone shouting the loudest. By all means, you could say, I take it on board, we're going to put it in the roadmap, but at the moment we're going with sort of the process and the data that we've got at the moment. I've been there, and I know it's not easy, but it is so important. What we're trying to do here is we're trying to fix the users paying quicker, and if that's a Hippo idea, it's probably not going to do that. The other way that you can bring a Hippo along for the ride is by showing them the money. If you can say, yes, we think that actually this is going to increase the cart conversion rate, therefore that is X thousands a day, month, year, whatever it may be, they'll quite often then let you get on with things. So we've now got lots of decisions and sort of planned tests. We now need to prioritize them because we can't run everything at once. Generally, you kind of do it through there's lots of different frameworks, but confidence, impact, and ease of the test are sort of the three main pillars. So the confidence will be, are we sure this is an issue? Do we think that actually we've got enough data that this is a problem? Or, like we said earlier, is this from someone's opinion? Do we think that actually what we're sort of suggesting here is going to solve a customer pain problem. If we're talking about a homepage banner, that's a nice to have, but it's certainly not something that maybe necessarily came up in what we were, our research and our insight that we did earlier. But also, is it on a high traffic area of the site? If we're looking to optimize the contact us page, is that really necessary? Is that helping your business make more money? What's going to be the return on investment of a page such as that over something on your core customer journey? And ease can be a couple of things. It can be how easy it is to design and build what we're suggesting, but it could also be, is this easy because actually it's on the homepage and there's lots of stakeholders and they all want a piece of it? Or do we need to actually take a step back and think this isn't easy because if we really want to push with this, we need to go and do more research? Like I said, there's lots of frameworks and they've all got sort of three-letter acronyms. PI is performance, impact, and ease. ICE is impact, confidence, and ease. PXL is actually from Conversion XL's. It's their prioritization framework. And on the simple side of things, it's very much sort of 1 to 10 scale. It's very easy to set up. It's very easy to explain. And that sort of, what do we think the potential here is to improve? Is it important and is it easy? On the custom, more complex side of things, you start scoring things and you say, yes, this is on a high traffic page, 1 tick. This has come from multiple data sources, 2 ticks. This is on the core customer journey, 2 ticks. And what you should get with this is, if you've got 10 people all scoring it, they should all come up with a similar number because it's taking some of that, the personal thoughts out of, oh yeah, I really want to go with this test because this is the one that I proposed. There's also somewhere in the middle that I think often you do need a little bit of wiggle room with some of the more complex ones to say, this has scored highly, but my gut, my experience says that we also need to tread carefully. Yeah, so that's me talking about like I said, the scoring everything for the complex side of things. And what you should then push out is, with the 3 tests that we've suggested in that current example, we've scored them all out of 5, and we've now got a prioritization framework. You know, this one has scored that actually, where should we start? We should start with the messaging around the website security. We're confident that it's going to have an impact. We're confident that it's a problem. We believe it's going to have an impact, and it's actually fairly easy to implement. Let's run with it. Whilst we're running with that, we've sort of spotted that removing the upsell stage is going to have an impact, but it's actually not that easy. If that's from a technical perspective, let's not forget it. Let's work on that one whilst we're hopefully running this one at the top. So you're trying to kind of tee up that roadmap so you've always got things happening all the time. And then we kind of try and fix the problems. And CRO is kind of like a framework, really, to increase the likelihood that users are going to complete the desired goal. And that could be through something like a split test or an A/B test, which is you've probably all heard of, but you send 50% of your users down one route and 50% down another route. And you're just testing this blue element versus this red element. But you can also, we'll come on to it. So this was an A/B test that we ran for a client, and it's not the clearest, and they look very similar. But what we changed here was the button here said read details and apply, and this one just said apply for job. Now, who thinks that read details and apply was the winner? And who thinks apply for job was the winner? It was actually read details and apply. So kind of our thoughts coming out at the back end of this were, at this point in the journey, they don't yet want to apply for the job. They're still on a page here, you see, with 801 jobs. They're still trying to filter down to the job that is relevant for them. Therefore, what they want to do right now is only read the details. And then if I think, yes, that's suitable for me, then I might start applying. With multivariate testing, you need a lot more traffic because what you're going to do is you're going to split your page into many different sections. So you're going to change the header, the left nav, and the right potentially. And you're turning this into multiple combinations so you can have one header with a different right-hand section. So again, we ran this and we changed 54 different elements. So we had 1,000 different variations. And we actually got the conversion rate from 7% up to 18%, which is really quite a significant number. And that's through testing multiple things on a high traffic site. This is generally sort of the route that we would take with CRO. So we've kind of talked mostly around the analysis piece today. But we've really understood that analysis. We've turned it into a hypothesis. Then you kind of have to have an element of design. So we know what we want to change, and now we've got to come up with a design that is really going to change and move the needle positively. Then you need to build it, and it needs to be built properly. Like A/B testing software, generally they all have these what you call WYSIWYG tools, where what you see is what you get, and you can move elements around the page. If you do that and then try and look at it on a browser other than the one that you've been testing on, it almost guarantee it won't work. Also, if you try it then on a mobile phone, it probably also won't work. So you need to make sure that you've got a proper developer to build in those tests. Once you're happy with the tests, you're then pushing them live. Brilliant, let's run them for a set period of time. Again, the tools will often have sort of confidence and put in place that says, okay, once this is 95% confident that A or B is going to win, I'm going to send you an email. But take it very carefully. You need to make sure that you have enough data that what you're seeing is believable. So make sure you run it for at least 2 business cycles, and preferably more. So for many businesses, that will be a week. But if you say in payday loans, then your business cycles are likely a month. You also need to make sure that you've got a couple of hundred conversions on each variation. Otherwise, if you've got only 10 and 15, you could make the call that, oh yeah, the one that had 15 won, but the numbers are so small that they can be skewed very easily. And then once we've pushed things live, we then go back into the analysis phase. So if it wins, boom. Aren't we brilliant? If it didn't win, oh my God, I'm going to get fired. But don't panic. If it lost, there's generally a reason why, and the analysis phase can help you. It's often the best way to term a failed experiment actually is a bullet dodged. We were thinking of implementing this, but actually we tested it before we put it live, and we realized that has saved us £500,000 because we haven't changed the element or the design of this page. Make sure you share this around the business. Again, bring them along for the ride. Explain to them that you're learning, and you should be learning. If it failed, there's got to be a reason why. Then understanding the business impact, you've got to make sure you do that. You've got to innovate on the user experience. So here are some patterns that work most of the time. Less form fields, there's less for users to fill in. But more form fields also works. And what this is there's times where less works and there's times that more works. You just have to understand the customer journey that you're on. Progressive fields often helps. It's easier to get a small sort of micro conversion from a user to start the journey, and they are more likely to continue the journey because they've already started it. Removing gift codes. How many times have you seen on a checkout page, enter your coupon code? I didn't have one, but now I'm going to go and try and find one. If you're going to have this, have it slightly earlier in the journey at the basket, and don't have a great big box. Have sort of a text field that says, do you have a coupon code? Click here, and that opens the box. USP bars are so important because they allow you to get across to your users a couple of key pieces of information, generally as soon as they land on the page, on every page, because you have it under the header there. It could be that you've got free shipping, or you've got a sale on, or you've got 2 free samples if you order today. Personalization is very tricky, but if you can start to understand users' names, it certainly helps. You capture the username whilst they're signing up. You then have it to use in emails. Hello, Richard. Here's something amazing for you. Even better if they know my name and actually they know that I'm interested in men's clothes over women's clothes. It's not easy, like I say, because I could be buying for my wife or vice versa, but it certainly starts helping you understand and improve the journey, the experience that a user will have with you. So I mentioned it earlier, goodui.org is a very good place to capture lots of these. So in summary, we would say you have to know who your users are before you can do anything. You've got to find out what problems they have. If you can then turn that into tests that you can fix those problems, and at the end of it, you've got to learn and share your results with the rest of the business. Thank you very much. So if you want to get in touch with us, you can on our Twitter or our email address. Shelley, our marketing director, will be here again tomorrow, all tomorrow. So feel free to catch up with her as well. Thank you very much.
Do you have any questions? The cat box is coming your way. Oh, sorry.
Hi, that was great, really interesting, thank you. Loads of data. Earlier on, you were saying about how people don't look at necessarily an F shape or an E shape, but they look everywhere on the website. Mm-hmm. Could that be related to the fact that they're being tested?
Yes, it could be, but actually, I think it's one of those unconscious things. So actually, as you're looking at a site, because particularly with the eye tracking, it's under the screen, that's not necessarily something that's on their face. So it's not too far away from a normal experience, because I'm just looking at the screen in front of me using a mouse or whatever it may be. So yes, it could be, but actually we've run these tests so many times that actually we're confident that users are doing that rather than going left, right. And there's certainly, maybe if you're on a news website, there probably is more of an F shape, actually, because that's how users are used to reading. But particularly on a product page where you've got images, some details here, maybe a video, there's lots of things distracting the user potentially.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Well, thank you very much. Is it?
Thanks.
So, yeah, I found that really interesting.